Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome to my top 10 list of my favorite comic books and graphic novels. Going through this list took me a little longer than I actually expected because I had to go through a huge amount of boxes and bookshelves and things like that right in the middle of, other stuff that's going on around the household. But I had a simple grading system I'm going to share with you, which includes rating it by things like, obviously, how much I like the story, how much I like the art, how many issues are in it. I find that the longer stories I like more. That's why some of my favorites, like Doom 2099 and Grimjack. Did Doom 29? No, Doom did actually make the short list. It was I think American Flag. Did that not make it? There's some things I have in my collection that I'm a big fan of, but there's only a few issues, so it doesn't make the top 10. Also, how likely am I to reread it again? Most everything I've picked up and collected over the years, I've probably only read once or twice, with these exceptions. These are things that I will go back and read again, and there is one exception at the very top of the list. Is something I don't go back and reread just because I stopped reading it in the 90s, and what they did and why I stopped reading it. We'll get to that. But right off the bat, I'm going to start off with the honorable mentions. That is, like I just said, Doom 2099. Doom is one of my favorite characters. Him getting his own comic book where he's kind of the hero, kind of not fully the villain, makes the honorable mention. I don't know if I have the entire run. I don't think I do, but everything I read, I absolutely enjoyed. Then, like I mentioned earlier, American Flag by Howard Chaykin. He does the art and he wrote everything. One of his early works and one of my all-time favorites. This is just so irreverent and so full of things that I fear are actually going to come to pass. But absolutely loved it. Another one that made the honorable mention, Grimjack. I forget who wrote this. I want to say it was Mike Grell. No, it was Truman. But another one of my favorites, first comics publication. Most of you probably never heard of it, but he's a more or less a private detective. It's got a very noir feeling to it, despite the fact that he doesn't really dress that way. I think he's actually an American Indian. But it also didn't have a huge run. Most of First Comics really didn't. And then, believe it or not, down at the bottom of the list, Batman. As much as I like Batman, there's a whole bunch of things I like more. And my favorite Batman of all time was either Year One or The Dark Knight. But I couldn't find that in my collection, so I'm going to pull this. And I really do, actually. I think I like Year One a little bit better. Now we get into, actually, American Flag was number 10. Then we come to number 9. And for the most part, most of these are going to be omnibuses because it was easier to pull them than go through and look for the number one, like issue number 1 of all the comic books on this list. The next one is Rom, the Space Knight, originally based on a toy, but little did they know this was going to turn into one of Marvel's sleeper hits of that era. Absolutely love this tragic story that just, if you haven't read it, try and find a place you can catch issue number 1 and get back to me, because this is just such a phenomenal story. And the Space Knight 6-issue miniseries was also pretty incredible, probably even easier to get, but it came way later, so it's I don't know if it's fully canon, but anyways, that was number 9. That doesn't seem right. Okay, that was number 9. And here at number 8, probably no surprise in this one, Moon Knight. I have just about every Moon Knight comic, but this was one of the earliest ones I could find. This was Marvel Spotlight, when he was still kind of considered a more of an anti-hero, almost a villain. But absolutely, I actually like Moon Knight more than I like Batman. He was a self-made hero, or at least a self-made man and millionaire, as opposed to just inheriting a crap ton of money. Then the next one is no surprise to probably any of you, but it really doesn't fit in with the usual theme of there being a main character, and that is, of course, Creepy Magazine. I have a ton of these, but in omnibus form. They can't be beat. Nice hardcover. They're anthologies of horror stories. Almost never the same, reoccurring characters, other than I think Uncle Creepy was their mascot, kind of like the Crypt Keeper, that sort of thing. But just each issue had a crap ton of little black and white short stories, and the omnibuses are, I believe, 5 magazines in one hardcover. A lot of fun, and it's not just like gothic horror. There's sci-fi and contemporary modern horror, as well as some gothic and ancient history westerns. Whatever came along their desk, they published it. Next, we go back to an actual superhero. I'm having a hard time putting these someplace where I don't lose the order. Another one of my all-time favorite superheroes. And you may notice a little bit of a theme with the superheroes. I tend to go for the cosmic, the outside the earth, the more mundane heroes, earthbound heroes. Kind of really didn't grab me. And Star-Lord would have made this list, but because there are really so very few issues compared to the volumes of other heroes, it just didn't even make the honorable mention by that criteria. But the next one is, of course, the Silver Surfer. As some of you may or may not know, this was, the way I heard it, this was Stan Lee's voice and how he thought, the way Silver Surfer spoke, and the way he didn't understand the human condition was all right out of Stan Lee's heart and soul. I absolutely love this character, and I can't wait to get the next one. I just need to wait for the price to come down, because those are easily $100 omnibuses. Next one, we hit the top 5, and I didn't have to dig far for this one because it was actually on a wall. Funny story, this was the very first issue I ever bought of this comic. I was working at a comic book store as a really young kid, like 12 or 13. And they told me, if you see this issue in like a liquor store or 7-Eleven or something, grab it because it's really hot. And I grabbed 4. And about a week later, they went to $100, and I should have sold 3 of them, but I'm glad I didn't. And they went back down to like $10 or something like that. But years later, I would meet Chris Claremont, and I would get him to autograph this and the issue number 1 that came out at that time, even though it wasn't the first number 1. It was like a new, like, revamping of the series. And that is, of course, the X-Men. And this is the Death of the Phoenix issue. And I don't know if you could see the autograph, but I had him autograph it with an Analyte pen on the front cover as opposed to on the inside cover, which he is wont to do. And I'm like, no, I want to be able to see it when I frame it, and I want other people to see it. And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem, Shadow. And I got to talk to him for a little while, because I learned a long time ago in the getting of autographs, let people go ahead of you so you're the last guy, so that when everybody else has had their turn, you get a couple extra minutes to talk to them. And indeed I did. And I've been carrying this around since 1980. So the other thing about this issue is Jean Grey technically, according to the comic code, self-deleted herself, so there was no comic code on this, and so it was a big deal. And this was when, in my opinion, the X-Men were the best. Prior to that, it was the Hellfire Club saga on through the Phoenix saga and things like that, and I stopped reading the X-Men during the Age of Apocalypse because I hated the story, and I hated the fact that they just, in the middle of a storyline, decided to do this whole new thing, and it would be years, if ever, I don't know, that they went back to the actual story and finished what they were doing, and I stopped reading X-Men about that time. Now we're into the top four, and no, that's, my order's all messed up. Sorry, folks. We're at number 5. I was looking at the wrong list. I had to rewrite my list. 1977 was a magnificent year for comic books and movies and toys. And as a 10-year-old kid, I saw this comic book on the shelves at the land of Oohs and Ahs. It was in Orange County, California, over on Brookhurst and Hazard. I think it was Hazard or Warner. And I saw this on the rack, and I'm like, what in the world was that? And the guy said, well, it may be, a little, above your, But he sold it to me anyways. And ever since then, and this was before I even knew about the Edgar Rice Burroughs novels, which I would then read later that year because I was so fascinated with this world of Mars and John Carter. This is the black and white omnibus that contains all of the black and white Marvel issues, I think all 28 of them. But I also have a crap ton of the Dynamite comics, John Carter, as well as the Days of Thor's comic books, which are also very fun. A little over the top with the lack of attire for the characters, but it's a different time than it was. But even back then, it was pretty risque, and the artwork, everything about it. You guys know, John Carter is one of the few IPs that I would actually role play in if someone else were to run it. Now we get to number 4. This one's a bit of a controversial comic book. I've talked about it before. I have volume 4 waiting to be read. If you've never read Cerebus, what are you doing with your life? Cerebus the Aardvark, an absolute masterpiece. There's so much that can be said about what Dave Sim did for the independent comic book industry, making it a viable endeavor to create comic books and not have to live under the Marvel or DC or even Image banner, which I don't think existed when he did this. And he said he was going to write 300 comic books and draw them himself and do everything himself and publish them himself. And he did exactly that. He later got help with, I forget the artist's name, who helped him with the backgrounds, which just, the two of them together made some of the most amazing artwork I've ever seen in a comic book, black and white or color. The story was, pure parody and also rather controversial. And you can look him up, but Cerebus is a solid number 4 for me, and I will eventually have all, I think 10 or 14 of the, they called them phone books, because these were the original omnibus. As far as I know, Dave Sim and Cerebus were the first comic available in such a massive, thick tome of comics. I think there's like 20 or 30 issues in each one of these, and you can still pick them up really, really cheap. So if you don't have Cerebus number 1, save up your lunch money and go out and grab a copy. now we get into the top three, the things that I probably have read over and over and over again, multiple times, more than anything else on the list. And especially with number three, I find new stories and new things that I had forgotten, or because number three, originally the Vampirella stories, she was just the mascot of her own magazine. She didn't really have much in the way of her own story, but as time grew, she got more and more of her own story. Each issue of the magazine would have one Vampirella story, and then 4 or 5 or 6 creepy or eerie-esque, short stories that had nothing to do with her, and it was just a way to, use some of the other stories that Warren Magazine had paid for. And to this day, excuse me, I knew I was going to sneeze. Sorry about that, folks. Vampirella, top 3 favorite art, story, longevity, fun characters, fun bad guys, fun good guys. It's not the story that you probably think it is. So if you get some spare time, you got some spare money lying around, and you want to read something brand new that's in the horror vein, pardon the pun, Vampirella, absolutely a must-have. Some of you are going to be surprised that this one isn't at the top 10 of my list, but that is because there's something that I actually enjoy more. It's more my speed, but Savage Sword of Conan did come in at number 2, and I also put King Conan, Conan the Barbarian, and Kull, which I have all the omnibuses over there, all in the same bracket. And this last September, I read a ton of Conan, and I'm kind of a little burnt. I need a break until September, in which case I will pick up the Sumerian September mantle and do more stuff and do more Conan content. But I've read it all, and so I could go a couple of years without reading it, but I absolutely love this. This was one of the first magazines that I really started to understand and be able to recognize quality black and white art over some of the schlocky, just throw something in a magazine to fill up an issue. Some creepy and eerie were like that. But Savage Sword of Conan, absolutely phenomenal art, always, all the time. And it gets number 2. But you're saying, well, what could you like more than that? How could anything else top that? Well, take Conan, take all the sword and sorcery, action and adventure, monsters, etc., and then throw in a guy with some guns, a former Air Force pilot, some women, some female characters that weren't just eye candy, that would stick around through the entirety of the magazine, a love interest, a romance story that didn't end tragically or with just an arranged marriage like with Conan's case, and all written, I believe, written and drawn by the wonderful Mike Grell. The 2-page spreads that would open up every issue, the intrigue, the mystery, the much longer, more in-depth political and supernatural story that was The Warlord is clearly my absolute favorite comic book out there. The melding of genres, the Hollow Earth, the science and sorcery, not just because Travis Morgan, the Warlord, was a man from the modern day Earth at the time, but because down in the Hollow Earth there were techno magic users and secret organizations and cults and sects of Atlanteans and all kinds of weird high-tech quasi-magic weirdness. Throw in dinosaurs, and and monsters and all of that, and you have one of the greatest stories ever written when it comes to sword and sorcery, with a nice big fat helping of techno goodness. So there you have it, folks. That is my list of top 10 plus a couple honorable mentions, and I could make the honorable mentions list, easily 100. My comic book collection is pretty vast, and I couldn't go through everything, and I'm sure had I gone through it, I would have found a whole bunch of other things to add. Teen Titans, the Avengers, but I didn't add any of the superhero teams for the most part, because I haven't actually read any of those since I was a youngster, and since then I kind of lost the enthusiasm for that sort of thing. I want just the hero and the love interest and their day-to-day life, not these common fly by night groups with 100 different members that depending on who they're trying to cross over issues with and all that nonsense of the 90s. I got kind of burnt out on that, but there you have it. I would love to see what your favorite comic books or graphic novels are, and I know a lot of my friends who are doing the top 10 lists are going to pass on this one. That's fine. Maybe you can only do the top 5. Maybe you do top 3. Or maybe just wait for next week when we'll do something completely different. But there are a few people out there that I know who are big comic book fans out there, and I hope they will join in on this one and compare notes and see what everybody else likes, and learn a little bit more about our friends out there in TV land who are doing these top 10 lists. And if you've done a top 10 list and I haven't commented, that's probably because I didn't know that you did it and I didn't see it. Feel free to let me know or throw a Discord link, and I'll go watch and check out the lists, because we've done movies, TV, RPGs, authors, now comic books. And if you have a suggestion for another top 10 list, so we can keep this gravy train rolling of just camaraderie and togetherness and sharing of ourselves for a couple more weeks, I'll be happy to check it out. Until then, folks, have yourself a great week, and I will see you guys all in the funny papers.